And that brings me to a point that you spoke about validating the inner child at that workshop, and I would love for you to kind of speak on that, what you mean by validating the inner child.
All right. We have a major issue because the emotional dark age is upon us. We don't understand emotions. We don't understand that in order for people to get past emotions, they must have their emotions validated. And our inner child is no different. So the reason that the inner child still exists ultimately is that its emotions, whatever it was going through, were suppressed. And so that aspect of our consciousness that felt that emotion did not continue with us into adulthood. That's why it exists. So let's take a real life scenario. So kid loses his mother, and he's feeling all of that grief and confusion, a hell of a lot of emotions. And the parents in his life don't know how to coach him through grief in order to allow him to experience grief. Instead, they just say something like, "What's going to be okay, just come sit by us, watch this TV show." Now the kid goes, "Wow, there must be something wrong with the way that I'm feeling." And anything that's wrong or unacceptable, we must suppress and deny. We must annex it from our being. That's what happens with socialization. So that kid will suppress that aspect of themselves. It's almost like splitting off from their own sense of self. And that aspect that's grieving does not come forward with the rest of the individual into adulthood. So inner child work, even though it sounds like a super, fluffy self-help technique, is actual soul retrieval work. So what we do in inner child work is that we use our emotions, because that's the thing, this emotion doesn't go away. Grief keeps reflecting and reflecting. It's almost like the universe wants us to heal, wants us to be in a state of completion. So you will continue through your life, if you have suppressed grief, to run into situations that cause you to feel more grief. It's like calling you back to the portion of yourself that is missing. So that's every new circumstance is an opportunity to allow yourself to go fully through that emotion and to come out the other side of it. Now, obviously, we can use these like extreme emotional states that we get into, what we would call the reflection of a prior wound, to travel back and find the child who was wounded originally. And so if you look at this in the universe, it's almost like all timelines are branching off of that root. So if at 8 I lost my mother and I felt that kind of grief, that caused my life path potentials to go in the direction of grief. But if I go back and I actually give that child validation that how they feel is okay, that means we're sitting with the child and saying, "It's okay to feel this way. I'm sorry that you feel this way, but anyone would feel this way in your circumstance. In fact, I'm going to be here and hold you with this feeling because you don't need to change it." Then the child says, "How I feel and who I am at this moment is correct." Now, what you find really quickly, especially if you work with children, is that if you validate an emotion, the child moves through it so quickly. It's unbelievable how quick. And then they're ready to move on to a higher vibrational state. So you're actually changing the vibration or frequency of that prior event. And when you do that, that must affect all of the branches that come off of that particular root. So let's say that because that grief happened when you were 8 years old, you started drinking. And over the course of your life, that's how you suppressed your grief. Now, if you go back to the inner child work and you actually alter that particular original grief wounding, chances are you come back, you don't want to drink. You could be an alcoholic and not want another drink as long as you live. It's magic stuff.